All right, so we're gonna start our Tabata with those air squats, starting in 3, 2, 1, and go. So making sure our feet are a little bit wider than shoulder width apart, toes are pointed outwards, and we're coming down, making sure our knees go over our toes. And your modification for an air squat is that sit to stand, so same principles, except we're squatting until our bum hits that chair and then standing back up again. I'm going to turn up the volume on my phone so you can hear the timer go off. Good job. Now we're going to rest. And we've got 5 more seconds of rest before we head into that upright row. So taking our dumbbells from our hips all the way up to our collarbones, leading with our elbows, making sure to keep those dumbbells nice and tight to our body. Good job. Now placing those dumbbells to the side, because our next movement is going to be that run on the spot, starting in 5 seconds. And running on the spot, making sure to get your arms involved here. And we're over halfway through, so trying to speed it up a little bit. Good job. Now we're going to head into our reverse lunges. And remember, I'd like for you to hold some weight if you're able to. So you can either hold that weight up on your shoulder or down at your hips like a suitcase carry. And we're moving into those reverse lunges. And if you can't bring your knee all the way down to the floor, then you're just going to take a big step back and bring that knee as low as you can and then stand back up again. And remember too, with lunges, we're pretending that we're standing on train tracks. And 10 seconds left. Good job. Now our next movement is going to be that seated oblique twist. If you're not comfortable coming down onto the ground, then you can do this from a chair. So taking that dumbbell from side to side, getting those core muscles involved here. To make this a bit more challenging, you can raise your heels in the air, or you can keep them planted on the floor. Good job. Now our next movement is going to be that floor press. And if you're not coming down onto the floor, what you can do is a seated overhead press. Otherwise, we're laying down on the floor, back against the floor, and doing those floor presses. So when our dumbbells are at the top here in the air, we want to make sure that our wrist, elbow, and shoulder are completely stacked. So that just means they're completely over one another. Then as we come down, we're making sure that that dumbbell stays over our elbow the whole time until our arms rest on the floor. Then we're going to press back up again. And just moving through those movements here. Good job. After our floor press, we're going to get into that glute bridge. So still laying down on the floor. If we're not on the floor, what we can do instead of a glute bridge is some standing leg abduction. So glute bridge, remember, we're raising our bum off the ground by pushing through our heels and just moving through that motion. If you're standing up, that standing leg abduction is just bringing that leg out to the side here. And then switch sides if you're standing up. Otherwise, keep doing those glute bridges. So again, this is the glute bridge here. Good job. Now we're going to stand back up to get ready to do those burpees. And starting the burpees, taking whatever option works best for you. If that's against the wall or against the countertop. And remember, as you're doing that push-up, to keep your hands directly under your shoulders. Don't forget to do that little hop in between push-ups. Good job. Now after the burpees, we're going to get ready to do our bicep curl to a shoulder press using our dumbbells. So raising those dumbbells to our shoulders, then pressing overhead and reversing that movement on the way down, making sure to move through this nice and slow and controlled. Ten seconds left. Good job. Now our next movement is going to be our deadlift. So starting with our dumbbells at our hips, making sure our feet are directly under our hips. And we're lowering those dumbbells down the fronts of our legs by hinging at the hips till we get to about mid-shin, then pulling back up again. So making sure that our back is nice and flat throughout this whole movement. And trying to keep those dumbbells nice and tight to our body. Good job. And then our last movement before our 1 minute break is going to be that alternating knee to elbow. So you can place your dumbbells to the side and bringing that opposite elbow to our opposite knee, really trying to work the core muscles here. And 10 seconds left. Good job. Now we're going to take a 60-second rest before we repeat that. So grabbing a drink of water. And remember, our first movement again will be those air squats. So starting in 30 seconds. And starting with those air squats, making sure our feet are a little bit wider than shoulder width apart, toes are pointed outwards, and we're squatting down, making sure our knees guide over our toes. And remember, you can always do those sit to stands as an alternative movement. Good job. Then our next movement is going to be that upright row. So starting in less than 10 seconds. So feet are under our hips and we're pulling those dumbbells up to our collarbone, making sure to lead with our elbows. And try to really squeeze those back muscles together when you're up at the top here. Good job. Then our next movement is going to be that running on the spot. So setting our dumbbells to the side. And we're getting ready to run on the spot. And 20 seconds left, so speed it up a little bit if you can, making sure to keep your arms involved. Good job. And our next movement is going to be that reverse lunge. And again, I want you to try to hold some kind of weight during these lunges. So you can either hold that weight up on your shoulders or down at your hips like a suitcase carry, whichever works best for you. And remember, we don't have to bring our knee all the way to the floor if we're unable to. We just want to bring it as low as we can. Good job. Then our next movement is going to be that seated oblique twist. So either doing this down on the floor or in a chair. So taking that dumbbell from side to side. Really using our core muscles here. And 10 seconds left. Good job. Now we're going to transition into that floor press. And remember, if you're not going down on the floor, then you'll just be doing a seated overhead press. So in that floor press, you want to make sure that your dumbbell is always over your wrist and your elbow. And we're pressing back up again once our arms touch the floor. And with that overhead press, we're just sitting down and pressing those dumbbells overhead. Good job. Now our next movement is going to be that glute bridge if we're down on the floor, or the standing leg abduction if we're not coming down onto the floor today. So glute bridge, remember pressing our heels into the floor and bringing our bum into the air to make a straight line from our knees to our hips to our shoulder joint, lowering our bum back down to the floor and then just moving through that movement. If we're not on the floor, then we're doing those standing leg abductions. And we're switching legs now that we're halfway if we're doing those leg abductions. Good job. And then our next movement is going to be our burpees. So remember, we can either do these against the wall or against a countertop. So remember doing that push-up, then taking a little hop in between each push-up and just moving through those two different movements. Making sure that every time we do the push-up, our hands are directly under our shoulder joints. And good job. Now after those burpees, we're gonna grab our dumbbells again to get ready to do those bicep curls to a shoulder press. So lifting those dumbbells up to our shoulders, then pressing over heads and reversing that movement on the way down. Making sure to move through this nice and slow and controlled. And remember too, we want to try to keep our shoulders relaxed. So we don't want them up at our ears. We want them nice and down and relaxed. Good job. And after those bicep curls to shoulder press, now we're going to get into our deadlift. So to start, making sure that our feet are directly under our hips, and we're lowering those dumbbells by hinging at the hips until they reach our mid shin and pulling back up again. And remember, keeping our back nice and flat throughout this movement here. Good job. And then our last movement for our Tabata before we move into our next round is that alternating knee to elbow starting in 5 seconds. So bringing that opposite elbow to our opposite knee and really crunching at our core muscles here. And 10 seconds left. Good job. Now we're going to take that 1 minute rest again and then move through that once more. So grabbing your drink of water, taking a moment to catch your breath. And so we've got 30 more seconds of rest before we move back into those air squats again. And starting back up with those air squats in 5 seconds. So squatting down, making sure our feet are a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. Toes are pointed outwards and our knees are going outwards as we go down. And trying to keep your chest nice and upright here. So we don't want to collapse into our thighs like this. We want to keep our chest nice and upright. And 10 seconds left. Good job. Now getting our dumbbells ready to move into those upright rows. So starting with those dumbbells at our hips. And we're pulling those dumbbells up to our collarbone, leading with our elbows, making sure to squeeze our back muscles together at the top. So remember, we don't want to just pull with our wrists and have T-Rex arms. We want to pull from our elbows Good job. Now we're going to set those dumbbells to the side and do some running on the spot in 10 seconds here. And running on the spot. And we're over halfway there, so trying to speed it up a little bit if you're able to. Good job. Now our next movement is going to be those reverse lunges. And remember, I want you to hold some weight during these if you're able to. And getting into those reverse lunges. And so make sure your feet are on train tracks in this one. And really trying to push through your heel of your top foot to bring that back foot to reach its partner. And just like those air squats, we're trying to keep our chest nice and upright. So we don't want to fall onto our thigh down here. We want to stay nice and upright. Good job. Our next movement is going to be that seated oblique twist, whether you're sitting down on the floor or on a chair. And we're taking that dumbbell from side to side, working those core muscles here. Good job. Then our next movement is going to be that lying floor press. And if we're staying in our seats, then we're just doing some seated overhead press. So coming down onto our backs, and we're pressing those dumbbells overhead. We're doing that floor press here. Making sure to keep our wrists directly over our elbows throughout the entire movement. And if we're not down on the floor, then we're seated doing some overhead press. Making sure to have good control. Good job. And then if we're down on the floor, our next movement is going to be that glute bridge. If we're not down on the floor, then our next movement is going to be that standing leg abduction. And so that glute bridge, pushing through our heels to lift our bum into the air, and then just moving through that movement, taking your bum down to the floor, back up in the air, and repeating through that. If we are standing up, then we are doing some of those standing leg abductions here. And switching to our other leg if we're standing up. Ten seconds left. Good job. Then our next movement is going to be our burpees, whether you do those against the wall or a countertop. Starting in 5 seconds. And so getting into those burpees, making sure to do that push-up with your hands directly under your shoulders, and then hopping in the air in between every push-up. Good job with those burpees. Now we're going to grab our dumbbells again to get into those bicep curls to a shoulder press. So starting with those dumbbells at our hips, lifting them up onto our shoulders and then pressing them over heads, reversing that movement on the way down and repeating through that. Making sure to keep our shoulders nice and down and relaxed. And moving through this movement with good control. Good job. Then our second last movement is going to be our deadlifts. So making sure our feet are directly under our hips, our dumbbells are at our hips, and we're hinging at the hips to bring those dumbbells down. Once we reach mid shin, we're pulling back up again. And remember to keep your back nice and straight throughout this entire movement. "15 seconds left. And good job. And our last movement before we finish our Tabata is going to be that alternating knee to elbow. So taking our opposite elbow to our opposite knee, making sure to really use those core muscles. And 10 seconds left. And good job, everybody.